Northern California is simply chock full of public art. Southern California probably is as well, but that is a story for another group of videos. In this series, we explore over 100 creative works that people pass every day and probably don't even notice are there. Yet some do enjoy the artistry and perhaps even savor it. You can count me as part of that group, though this has indeed been an acquired taste. How this video series came to be is perhaps a bit complicated, since I first needed to determine what town had a reasonable amount of outdoor art. I found that indoor works may require permissions, and that is more trouble than it's worth. However, the internet did come in quite handy, and in some cases, there were actually maps and photos. Yet I never thought the available images were especially good, and besides, they are mostly copyrighted. Hence, it was necessary to find and visit the places, locate the art, take the photos, choose the best images, organize it all, and learn more about each artwork's story. The internet provided most of that information as well. I followed this procedure to create over 45 books, and I never grew tired of going out on a new quest and serendipitous adventure. In fact, you never knew where you might end up and what you could find. It was truly challenging to locate the objects of your search, since addresses were often missing, and you needed to make some educated guesses. I call it artistic orienteering, though this may indeed be a new phrase. My wife accompanied me on most of these trips, and you might wonder if she enjoyed it. She liked some of the experience, but she usually couldn't wait for it to be over. In fact, there were times when my wife absolutely hated our outings. Ah, well, as my grandmother used to say, to each his own, the lady said as she kissed the cow. Actually, my grandmother used some stronger words, but I'll be nice. Eventually, I selected the best of the public art and placed it with some description and sometimes a little history in 2 books. Art is in the eye of the beholder, a quest for the best public art in Northern California, Books 1 and 2, copyright 2016. Copies of both volumes can be found at the Bancroft Library, UC Berkeley, and at the State Library of California, Sacramento. This video series is based on those 2 volumes. However, there is a lot more regarding the way I became a public art junkie in the first place. Initially, I wanted to find interesting California sites, SITES, and sites, SIGHTS, that I could write about. And I started with Jerry and Catherine Graham's Bay Area Back Roads books as my guide. Since they included essentially no photos, I definitely needed to take my own. Unfortunately, the Graham books were at least 20 years out of date, but those volumes did indeed point out some interesting California locations. However, I sometimes found that the place described no longer existed. There would often be other intriguing spots either on the way or in the vicinity. Nevertheless, I rapidly outgrew those backroads volumes and needed to discover some new destinations on my own. This is where the internet helped quite a bit. Soon my best sources were Roadside America and Weird California, though very rapidly even those were not enough. Hence I started doing deeper research, first concentrating on historical information, mostly from town and county websites. I became interested in architecture and old houses, and many of my books dealt at least partly with those subjects. However, along the way I would run into, well, not literally, that would probably hurt, various pieces of outdoor public art and began writing about what I saw. At first I thought that such art demonstrated California's whimsy, but then I began to see the aesthetic aspects that were there all the time. Outdoor public art has 2 important features not demanded of the indoor kind. It must endure the weather and be reasonably resistant to vandals. It is indeed an interesting phenomenon. People are always erecting monuments and public displays, while many others want to deface and knock it all down. There is an amazing variation throughout communities when it comes to outdoor art for public viewing. Of course, to provide such artwork, a town needs to have enough income for such endeavors. This usually means that the municipality is of some size. Yet some tiny places have a surprising amount of creativity on display. A few towns, for example Napa and Yountville, have a large tax base, wineries, despite their size, so they are able to provide significant funding and attract artists. Yet other cities seem to have an aversion to any public art. The municipality, Concord, California, where we have lived for over 40 years, has essentially no public art. I believe this is because of an art fiasco that began in 1989. In that year, artist Gary Revesky installed a creative piece called the Concord Spirit Poles, and he was apparently paid fairly well for his efforts. The actual amount seems unavailable, though the entire project was said to cost $100,000. We moved to Concord in 1979, so I remember approximately when the poles were installed. In my opinion, they were a ghastly aluminum contrivance that looked not unlike a bunch of knitting needles stuck into the ground at different angles. Each pole was 8 to 50 feet long. Some weighed as much as 100 pounds. However, maybe I was just unable to appreciate the subtle details of Revesky's creation. Nevertheless, it was expected that the wind would make the poles sing, but the traffic noise was just too deafening to hear the songs. Perhaps as you went out in the dead of night, you might have had success, but then you might have lost your wallet as well. Concord became a national laughingstock over those poles. They were called the ugliest public art in the entire United States. Understandably, there was soon local pressure to have the, quotes, artwork removed, though somehow the city fathers had apparently overlooked a stipulation in the contract that prevented such. Happily for nearly everyone, except maybe the artists, the poles became unstable, allowing them to be torn down for safety reasons. There seemed to be a collective sigh of relief throughout the town, though to this day Concord is essentially zilch when it comes to public art. I'm sure they don't want to go through such nationwide ridicule all over again. However, Concord's artistic barrenness is a stark contrast to next door Walnut Creek, which has a lot of public works throughout the city, mostly in the downtown area. Interestingly, a local downtown Concord resident started an art cottage, where she initially lived. She holds art shows in her very small building and has told me that it is her way of bringing a little bit of Berkeley to Concord. Perhaps the town needs that, though others would say no way. Hence, as previously indicated, I wanted to show the best of what Northern California has on display and to provide description and history. You can be the judge as to how well I succeeded. Nevertheless, please remember that you are watching these videos for free. Hence, please cut me a little slack. Yet if you'd like my efforts, please contact me at charles@corticalfandango.com. That's CHARLES at CORTICALFANDANGO.com. Otherwise, if you can't say something nice, please be silent. I can already hear how quiet it has become.